Today marks the return of an annual series we do on the channel called the Off-Season Plan Series. Today we're going to kick things off with the 32nd ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the San Jose Sharks. We'll recap their 24-25 season and look to their off-season. What do they have for expiring contracts? What do they look forward to at the draft, free agency, trades, and what other moves should we expect from them this off-season? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're bringing back a series that I do every year, the annual off-season plan series. So of course, for the 16 teams that missed the playoffs, we usually start shortly after the regular season ends, and then we'll conduct this video for playoff teams gradually as those teams are eliminated. So usually what I like to do is I start at the bottom of the NHL and work our way up the standings here. Obviously the teams near the bottom are probably going to have more questions than answers, and as we go up, obviously some teams will be more interesting than others. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to recap the season that just ended, take a look at some of the key statistics. We'll analyze their salary cap space, expiring contracts, what to expect for them when it comes to the draft, free agency, and any potential trades or other important moves that the team needs to make throughout the offseason. So as I mentioned, we're kicking things off with the 32nd ranked team, the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, even though they were dead last in the NHL this year, they were a lot more fun to watch, I must say. They didn't win a whole lot more games than the year before, but they were a lot more entertaining, and I think the players and the fans had a more fun season. At least I hope you did, because I know when I watched Sharks games this year, there was a lot of optimism for the future. They finished with a record of 20, 50, and 12 for 52 points. That's not a very drastic improvement over last year. Last year they had 47 points, so it's only a 5-point improvement, and they had 19 wins compared to 20. So it's really not a whole lot more. They scored 208 goals, which was last in the league. They gave up 310 goals, which is also last in the league, but they were both improved over the year before. 208 goals this year compared to 181 the year before. Obviously, that's a pretty substantial increase. We're talking about basically 30 goals more. Goals against wise, they cut it down from 331 to 310. So that's a 21 goal increase here as well. So goals for, trending in the right direction. Goals against, trending in the right direction as well. They have a ways to go on both of them, but at the end of the day, at least they're positive improvements. The power play was the 26th best in the league with 18.6%, and the PK was 74.2, which was 27th. So lots of work to be done, but lots of things to build off of, you could say, for sure. Taking a look at their goaltending this year, we saw some significant moves. Of course, they started the season with Mackenzie Blackwood, and obviously he ended up being traded to the Colorado Avalanche. We also saw Vitek Vanacek get moved to the Florida Panthers, which left them essentially with Alexander Georgiev, who came over from Colorado as the primary goaltender. Finished with a record of 15, 26, and 4, a 371 goals against, and an 875 save percentage. That is not good at all. Of course, they had Georgi Romanov as well up. He only played 6 games, with 0-6 with a 389 and an 877. Askarov got into 12 games as well. 4, 6, and 2 with a 3.1 and an 896. Clearly, Askarov is the big goalie of the future. At least they hope he is. He's got terrific underlying numbers with the American Hockey League. Was a solid goalie prospect out of Russia prior to that. Obviously drafted by the Nashville Predators. Never got the opportunity he was looking for. Became available via trade, and Mike Greer pounced and brought him over to San Jose. So the goaltending numbers are not pretty. Now, we already know as well that Georgiev is not coming back. And I think basically what we should expect next year is Askarov in a tandem situation with a veteran goaltender who we don't know who that's going to be yet. Leading the team in scoring this year was rookie Macklin Celebrini, who had a really solid rookie campaign. Will definitely be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. He's in some tough competition, though, with guys like Dustin Wolf and Lane Hudson and Matvei Michkov. And of course, fellow teammate Will Smith, but I think he's definitely got the edge on Smith for sure. But Celebrini had 63 points. Looks like he is going to be a real franchise centerman to build around. Of course, Eklund was number 2 at 58, Toffoli next at 54, and Smith at 45. So overall, those are your leading scores. going into the offseason, they have lots of cap space and flexibility. $43.9 million available, and they have 16 contracts already signed for next year. So you're looking at 22, 23-man roster. So obviously you're looking at about 6 or 7 players for that amount of money. They may not be all the way to the cap. It's hard to say. So what should we expect in the offseason? Well, for one thing, a big one for all teams is contracts and who's expiring and who's eligible for extension. So clearly you got to try to look after your own internal business and your restricted free agents. Are they going to be qualified? Will they be back? The unrestricted free agents, are they going to have a chance to re-sign, or will they be finding a new home? And then the extensions, well, we'll look at some players that are eligible, and obviously some of the key ones that we could see, and we'll talk about the draft and other parts of free agency and trades as well. The restricted free agents that the Sharks have this offseason include goaltender Georgi Romanov, you got Jack Thompson, Shakir Mukhamadullin, Noah Gregor, Nikolai Kovalenko, Thomas Bordeleau, and Klim Kostin. I would suspect most of these players will be qualified. When it comes to a few of them, there are some question marks, though, for sure. But there's nothing real jumping out as anything that's going to be lucrative, expensive, or any earth-shattering decisions with those players. Obviously, a few of them have a future with the club, but nothing crazy. On the UFA side, we've got Jan Ruda and Alex Georgiev. As I mentioned, we already know Georgiev is not coming back. Ruda's obviously already to his mid-30s. I suspect he's probably not coming back either, or he likely would have been dealt. Now, as far as players that are eligible for extension, there are several. I'm not sure how many of these we're going to see Mike Grier rush to. Obviously, if they're eligible for an extension, that means they still are under contract for next season, so there's no rush. And unless they're an integral part of the team that they see as something they want to get ahead of. But you're looking at defensemen Mario Ferraro and Timothy Liljegren, as well as Vinny Desharnais. I'm not sure what to expect on those cases. Ferraro's been in and out of trade rumors for probably 2 years now. There's been times where we thought for sure he was going to be dealt. Other times where we thought maybe he looks like he's going to stay. I'm going to say that Mario Ferraro probably doesn't get extended, and he could become a prime target at this year's NHL trade deadline now that we're down to the end of his contract. As far as the others, it's kind of hard to say. Liljegren probably has the best future with the team amongst the three. You get Henry Thrun, Zach Ostapchuk, Ty Dellandrea, Alex Wenberg, Klim Kostin, and Carl Grundstrom. So it is possible that the team could announce extensions for those players. I just don't know that they're going to rush to it. They have lots of time and flexibility to make those decisions. Now, going into next year, besides what we have on this team, are there any other impactful rookies that could be having an impact on this franchise who could grab a roster spot? Well, the main one is Askarov. Obviously, he's expected to make the jump full-time to the NHL next year, so clearly the goaltender should go from being a call-up number 3 option to being a full-time goaltender. I suspect, though, that he may not be the starter. At best, I suspect he'll be in a tandem situation. So, like I said before, they will likely find a partner for him this offseason. It's going to be one of the questions that we look at here coming up in the next segment. Colin Graff's a player you could see more of next year as well. When it comes to another top prospect, Sam Dickinson, there's a question mark there. I mean, will Sam Dickinson be ready to take the jump to the pros next year? That's difficult to say, but I mean, he was a highly drafted defenseman. Obviously, he has some good pedigree, had some good games with the London Knights. So another player definitely to watch. We'll have to wait and see for sure. And of course, we don't know yet who the Sharks will be getting as a first-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. That could be an impact player that comes right away. Maybe they go to college. We don't know. We'll discuss that here as well. So that's kind of your setup for the offseason. Now we know how last season went. We looked at their cap space. We looked at players who need contracts that are already with the team. What rookies could jump into the lineup. Now the next question is, what are the top burning questions facing this franchise for the offseason? So what should we expect when it comes to the draft, to the trade market, those types of things? I don't suspect we're going to see any changes with the Sharks when it comes to either the head coach or the general manager. Obviously, Mike Grier is still fairly early in his tenure, and it seems to have this team heading in the right direction. So I'd be shocked if he was let go. I don't think there's going to be any front office changes. Behind the bench, Ryan Warsofsky has one season in and wasn't expected really to win a lot of games this year. So again, I don't think we have any questions really ask ourselves when it comes to who's running the club. But a big one, though, will be the 2025 NHL Draft. Not only who could they get, but will they keep the pick? Mike Greer, the GM of the club, made some interesting comments when the team held its end-of-season media availability when asked about, what options they might be looking at. When it comes to that, he said that if they were fortunate enough to select first overall again, he would be a lot more willing to entertain trading that pick than he was at last year's draft, where, of course, they kept it and selected Macklin Celebrini. Now, he said last year that he had a lot of teams calling him, asking him if he would consider moving the pick. He said he was offered some incredible, packages, but nothing that really blew his socks off enough to really have to think long and hard about pulling the trigger on the deal. I think, Greer clearly was quite familiar with Celebrini, the college he went to, obviously lots of connections there, and I think he was pretty set on bringing Celebrini to the Sharks. We know the connection between Celebrini and, of course, his dad with the Golden State Warriors. So there's, it just felt like it was meant to be. With the Sharks getting that pick, the connection to the area, the connection between Greer and where Celebrini was attending college, it just felt like everything aligned. So I don't. Plus, we know Celebrini was going to be a pretty special player. So as much as there were some interesting, offers thrown at him, like I said, nothing that got him to the point where he had to really seriously go, wow, maybe I should do this. But this year, he said clearly he would be more open to that. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, that it's going to happen. He said it would have to be an incredible offer that he just, couldn't refuse type of deal. We've seen occasionally in other sports as well where the first overall pick's been traded, and it's usually an absolute ransom that you see when that happens. Now, he mentioned Matthew Schaefer was expected to be the first overall pick. At least he's rated first right now by many scouting services and the NHL Central Scouting. But then he said after that, you kind of have a glut of high-end forwards there for the next several picks. So, the Sharks obviously being the worst team, the worst case scenario for them is they pick number 3. There's 2 draft lottery spots, 1 and 2. If the Sharks do not win either one, the worst case scenario is their 3rd overall, and they'd have a shot at getting a high-end forward. So if Schaefer does indeed go first, you're looking at, whether it's Michael Misa or James Haggins or Porter Martone. Like, there's a high-end impact forward up for grabs. But he said if he's able to pick first overall, not saying that he wouldn't want Schaefer, but I think with what they've already been able to add into the mix, it sure sounds like he's open to it. But that would certainly, if he did that, probably end up being more likely dealing with another team that's at least in the top 5 and where you swap picks and get a bunch of other assets on top of that for moving up. Now, it's probably unlikely to happen. We don't even know yet if the Sharks are going to be fortunate enough to win that first overall pick 2 years in a row. It may not even be an issue for them because they may not necessarily win. But at the end of the day, one of the big questions facing this team is, where are you going to pick and who could you grab with that selection? Unfortunately, if you look at the draft lottery odds, as much as they have the best odds for picking first, the odds are much greater that they don't win either one and they pick 3rd. In that case, you're looking at, assuming Schaefer does go first to another club, you're looking at, like I said, between Misa, Haggins, Martone, there's a few other forwards in the mix there too, that you're probably going to have to pick from. Obviously one of those guys would be gone, and you'd have the next selection. So either way, some great players kind of at your fingertips. Now, as I mentioned, another big question facing this team is goaltending. Goaltending needs to get a whole lot better if they're going to have a chance to win more hockey games next year and be more competitive. I think it's fair to say this team is still a couple years away, a minimum, of getting into the playoffs. You see a team like the Ducks, for example, who made a surprising coaching change, I will add. Considering they had like a 19-point improvement year over year, they got to a point where they're finally, they're a couple years ahead of the Sharks when it comes to their rebuild. And they're at a point where they're playing .500 hockey and they're not in the playoffs, but they're, at least they were in the conversation a lot longer this year, still fell short by a decent amount of points. So the Sharks got a lot of work to do to even get to that point. So yeah, you're looking at, if all goes well, probably 3 to 4 years. It could be. It's really hard to say, but goaltending needs to get better in a hurry. Askarov obviously has a lot of potential. We'll see, but they need to target another goaltender who can be in tandem with him. There's some veteran goaltenders that could be available for trade, whether it be John Gibson. I think there's a possibility Jonas Korpisalo could get moved out of Boston. There's probably a couple of others around the league as well on the free agent market. There's not going to be a lot. Maybe they target like an Alex Lyon, who's not expected to return to Detroit. There's a possibility Anton Forsberg out of Ottawa might be available. One of those guys who could work in tandem and maybe give you, 40, 45 games would be ideal. But we'll see what they decide to do. Clearly in free agency, I would suspect that we're going to see similar to last year. They get a great value in Tyler Toffoli. I do think they're probably going to target at least, maybe one more veteran to bring in. They have Toffoli. I think they were happy with Wenberg. We don't know exactly who that person could be. It's not a deep free agent pool this year. There are some names out there like Mitch Marner, who I would suspect wouldn't be in the running for the Sharks. That would be shocking if it was. But, after Mitch, there's not as much out there. You're looking at Brock Besser, Nick Ehlers, and then there's kind of a fall off. And some of these guys are going to really be a lot more interested in teams that are contending. They're getting into the later stage of their career, and they're going to want term. And Mike Grier made it pretty clear that he's probably going to target a couple of free agents to round out his roster, but he's not really in a spot where he's going to be looking to hand out any kind of term. You're probably looking at 1 or 2 year deals. It's not going to be anything big and substantial on a longer term basis. It'll be short term deals that they feel like they can bring in an asset. They can help them for 1, maybe 2 years, and then flip them and get another asset in return. And then obviously signing them as a free agent, they didn't have to pay anything to get them. So there is that. When it comes to trades, I think there are a few names, like I said, that are right at the top of the list as potential trade targets. Kovalenko, who was acquired from the Avalanche earlier this year, we know he's not happy with his playing time and his role with the club. So there's a possibility that he could get moved. There's also a possibility he could head back and maybe play in the KHL. That's been rumored as well. Like I said, Mario Ferraro has been in and out of the rumor mill for some time. I do think there's a chance he could finally move, but it wouldn't be shocking if they held off and waited closer to the trade deadline. I'm not sure how they felt about, guys like, when it comes to like Kostin or Grunstrom or Desharnais, there are possibilities they could get flipped. It really boils down to what the options are going to be out there, but I don't suspect we're going to see any trades for existing players on our roster that are significant. One of the questions I would have had on here if we didn't find out the answer recently was going to be the future of Captain Logan Couture, who still had some term on his contract, but unfortunately we found out here in recent weeks that Logan Couture's playing days are over. Unfortunately, the attempted comeback from injury is not something he's going to be pursuing anymore, and he will remain inactive and be on long-term injured reserve. Well, if need be, he's going to be on injured reserve of some sort for the remainder of his contract. They have the option of going LTIR with him if they need to spend above the cap, but he unfortunately won't be able to come back. So I guess that raises another question too, is will they name a new captain for the fall, for the next season? GM Mike Grier was asked this question at the end of season media availability. He didn't completely say they wouldn't or they would, but he did say that there was a possibility that they will not. I think that it's pretty well extremely likely that Macklin Celebrini does become the next captain. Whether or not they want to slap that C on his jersey, 19 years old for next season, I don't know that that's going to happen. They might feel that it's too much, too soon, don't need to add the extra pressure to him. Wouldn't be shocking if they did run another season here without an active captain on the ice. Obviously, they technically have had a captain for the last few years with Logan Couture, just we've rarely seen him. Hasn't played much the last couple of seasons here, so it's hard to say what they're going to do. But I would suspect that the answer to the question will be Celebrini will be the next captain, but it may not be this fall. They may choose to wait and just run with, 3As or something like that. We'll have to wait and see what the Sharks do. So those are all my questions. My expectations next year is that we're going to see the Sharks improve some more. They're going to add, like I said, another potential high-end player of the draft, assuming they retain the pick, which is the most likely scenario. We could see them make a few trades to bring in some other, players that'll make the team better here as well. Maybe if all goes well, maybe they make another jump next year. Maybe they go from 52 points. Maybe it's, upwards of, 70, 72, something in that range. Maybe it's more. I would suspect, though, with a very deep Western Conference and the fact that they have to play those Western Conference teams as much as they do, being in that conference and division, it's going to be tough for them to make a lot of, ground that way in 1 year. So I do think they can be better next year. I think they can be even more fun, even more exciting, but it's still going to be a little ways before they likely see playoffs. But let me know your expectations for the offseason and for next year. What do you think the Sharks will do for moves this year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.